Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. The Ekiti governorship election, which held over the weekend, is still generating reactions in the polity, despite issues raised by stakeholders who observed the poll. Majority reported that it was peaceful. On whether the election was free and fair, many observers described the exercise as one characterized by vote buying and heavy inducement of the electorate. In fact, the two major political parties had, in a trade of words, accused one another of being culpable. With the Ekiti governorship election being the first major election to be conducted by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, with the new electoral law in place, it is expected to set a precedence ahead of the 2023 general election. On Daily Politics today, we'll be discussing the outcome of the Ekiti governorship election as well as other issues arising from it. I have in the studio Emmanuel Njoku, is a Director, Governance and Democracy for Connected Development.
Thank you for having me.
We're also joined by Paul James. We are joined by Mbu Eno, who is the head election observation for Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development. He is joining us via Skype to give us his perspective on this election. Let's now take a quick break. When we return, the discussion will commence. Thank you very much for staying with us. Still Daily Politics, and today our talking point is the Ekiti governorship election, perhaps doing a postmortem of what transpired on Saturday. I will go straight to Mbu Eno, who is the head election observation Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, who is joining us via Skype. Eno, thank you for joining us. Okay, let's start the discussion from here, perhaps while we get Mbu to respond. Now, Mr. Emmanuel, you happen to be at Ekiti, in Ekiti during this election, and you observed, what transpired and all of that. Let me start by getting your perspective. What really stands out for you as an election observer who has been observing election over the years?
So for the Ekiti election, one of the things that stood out for me is the very obvious improvement for INEC in their logistics, in their deployment. So usually we'll go to elections where you see by 9:30, by 10, you see the poll officials are just getting to their polling units. But in Ekiti, as early as 7:30, 8 o'clock, a lot of the poll officials were already on ground. At least by 8:30, close to 80 to 90% of the polling units were already on ground. Not just that, even the security deployments. By 8:30, most of the polling units were already set up and ready to start the process. And security personnel were all on ground very much earlier than you would expected. And so we are told these are the flashpoints, this here and there are the flashpoints. But surprisingly, the election happened and it was peaceful. And I believe all of that happened because of the new Electoral Act, the new Electoral Act 2022, and the provisions therein. So most of the things that usually will cause the unnecessary tension, the law has kind of, put a gauge on it that doesn't allow for all of that again. So the election for me generally was peaceful, and everything. So by already 4:30, 5 o'clock, most of the polling units were already done. Right. And another thing that actually stood out for me the most, I just remembered now, was the INEC result portal. So so election finished, typical election is supposed to finish by 2:30, then they start counting, sorting, and then collation process starts. By 10 o'clock, about 10:15 p.m. of the same day, all the results, the 2,445 polling unit results, had already dropped into the election result portal. So at that point, you know, people that had situation rooms set up, even political parties, already knew who was winning. We've never seen that before. We've never had that before. To even see INEC declare results as early as, you know, before the daybreak of the next day. I mean, I couldn't catch up at some point. I slept up around 1:30 a.m. And by the time I woke up, the result was a winner has been returned.
Yeah.
You know. So
okay. Yeah. You talked about the improvement in terms of the deployment of logistics, especially the technology, you know, used by INEC. But substantially, some would say, election also deals a lot with humans, you know, human resource. And INEC, you know, has a number of officials, apart from those at the field, talking about the polling units, officials and what have you. You also have, you know, the electoral umpire itself deploying a number of, you know, supervisory officers. Take, for instance, we have 4 national commissioners. We also have 8 resident electoral commissioners, all for this election. And then looking at the size, you know, the size of the state, you know, some would say that's the reason why it was a bit easy or easier for INEC to be able to deliver in good time. Do you factor all of this in and put it into consideration? Yes.
So frankly, Ekiti State is not a very big state in landmass. The farthest place from any part of Ekiti, you know, to the capital, I understand is about 2 hours, 20 minutes. You know, and Ekiti State doesn't have far to reach areas. So that, frankly, I believe, played a major role in, you know, helping INEC to deliver the elections in the way they did. But however, it's still commendable because, so when you look at talking about far to reach areas, the FCT Council elections that happened sometime around February this year, you know, there are some polling units inside Amak that the poll officers were still not there as at 9 o'clock, 9:30 a.m. In as much as it's just a 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes distance for them to be there. The poll officers were still not there. So we'll give it to INEC for the way they deployed, you know, the kind of mobilization they did, the kind of coordination they did. We'll give it to them. So for us as an organization, we want to always commend government institutions when they get it right. And I think in this election, to an extent, yes, they got it right.
Okay. We're very impressed. Still talking about INEC, for instance, you know, the electoral management body is also very conscious of the fact that we're operating under a new law. And all eyes are on it, you know, for a start to see how it can deliver with this, you know, legal framework, so to speak. And then perhaps all other stakeholders are also mindful of the fact that they have to, you know, fall in line with the provisions of the Act. Do you think that has, you know, helped in shaping the thinking or changing the mindset and attitude of the electoral management body itself and then the stakeholders?
I think for INEC, the deployment of beavers, this is not the first time beavers is being deployed to an election. The beavers was deployed to a by-election in Delta State last year. The beavers was deployed to Anambra election. The beavers was deployed at the Federal Capital Council elections. So this is the 4th time. And so if you look at it from Delta to Anambra and the issues that happen in Anambra with the beavers, the shortcomings of the beavers, and then election within security as well in Anambra. And then looking at the obvious shortcomings of the beavers in the FCT polls, you know, it was a very terrible, disappointing outing.
It was very prominent.
It was a disappointing outing at the FCT Council polls. Now, I think INEC had used those elections more like a test run of the beavers. To perfect and correct the shortcomings of the beavers in the past elections. So before the elections, both the Ekiti State REC and the chairman had meeting with civil society, the state had meeting with Situation Room. They all assured us that they are good to go. But you know, it's usually what they say. But when you get to the polls, it's something different.
You didn't take them serious until
yeah. So not like we didn't take them serious. We'll always give benefit of doubt. But surprisingly, positively, I'll tell you that it was. And so I've listened to the people that contested the elections, especially the candidate of the SDP. You know, usually after an election, you see the people that the losers talk about how they rigged the process, how they, you know, how the deployment, but in this very case, if you noticed, the candidate of the SDP is not exactly talking about that the beavers failed him or that he's just talking about the part of the voter inducement.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. You know, it got across based on the the feedback from people who are on ground. But let's bring in Mbu Eno, who is head election observation, CJID, which is Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development. Mbu, are you there now?
Oh my goodness. I think I lost your audio. If you can hear me.
I hear you loud and clear. Mbu, I did say that, okay, bringing you on board now for you to give us your perspective on the conduct of the Ekiti election. Let's get your views. What were your takeaways, you know, as you left Ekiti on Saturday?
Oh, thank you so much. First and foremost, just like James started, I would also want to commend INEC. A great deal of improvement in terms of logistics, and of course, the technological deployment was quite fantastic. But not without some bit of lapses. I think there is still an opportunity for improvement. One really, really good thing that INEC has done is also what James has said, early deployment of materials. On the other hand, I think what we saw was just that as much as the Electoral Commission is trying to improve the outcomes of elections, our politicians are becoming more sophisticated in vote buying. I'm not really sure there has been any election so far that this level of vote buying has been experienced. And that really puts us, the civil society, the media, and every single Nigerian needs to see what they can do from their own little corners to reduce that particular menace.
As Nigerians prepare to go to the polls in February next year to elect leaders at various levels of governance, the nation's electoral process is going through some far-reaching reforms aimed at making the votes count. This positive development is not only consolidating the gains recorded in Nigeria's democratic journey, but building confidence of the electorate in taking active part in the process. The introduction of two key technological innovations in election management process, such as the Biomodal Voter Accreditation System, BVAS, and the INEC Result Transmission Portal, IREP, appeared a game changer. From 84 million voter registration database in 2019, INEC is witnessing through its continuous exercise scheduled to end next week an unprecedented rise in the PBC figures, which now stood at 10.2 million as at 30th May this year, with the youths gradually taking the lead. What could have been the driving force behind this PBC revolution in Nigeria? How can it change the existing notion about elections in the country? Who will be the ultimate beneficiary of the expected outcome? This is our talking point on Daily Politics today. Our guest on the show, Dr. Yunusa Tanko, spokesman of the Third Force Movement.
Thank you very much for having me.
Also joining us for the discussion is Mr. Kainde Amodu is an in-house analyst here with the Media Trust Limited. Together, we'll be looking at the issues very closely. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a short break. Now, when we return, we'll continue with the discussion. Stay with us.
Times have passed, and with it so many things that once were our visual delights. Technological advancement has brought about tremendous changes in the way and manner media deliver content to its audience.
As it continues to reposition itself to serve you much better, Media Trust Limited is rebranding its logo and visual identity to reflect our current vision and futuristic drive.
We have spread our tentacles beyond the pages of the newspaper to the digital space. The new logos and visual identities reflect the new scope of our multimedia reach.
Even with this development, however, we will continue to remain with you as we have always remained, committed to our founding philosophy, which is based on trust, integrity, openness, and courage.
The new logo, which is a marriage of a revolving globe and a mobile device, signifies the unlimited reach of our content on the digital space.
We are always the backbone of operations as we do our best to deliver content that suits your needs.
When you see a new trust title or platform in the next few days, therefore, do not be alarmed.
We remain committed to you and will continue to serve you through fair and responsible journalism.
Thank you for staying with us. Still Daily Politics. And today we're looking at the PBC revolution, looking at the impact, the current transformation or reforms that Nigeria's electoral processes is making, in building confidence of Nigerians ahead of 2023 elections. And before now, let me start with you, Dr. Inusa.
Yes.
INEC, and the previous regime, that is, and Professor Tahiru Jega, has made a significant stride, in bringing in innovations and, of course, reforms that build some sort of confidence among Nigerians. The introduction of the card reader, for instance, has done marvelously well, especially in the 2015 elections. And now we're beginning to see some level of consolidation by the Professor Yakubu, led INEC, with the coming of this, technological innovations, which we are also giving strength, by the new Electoral Act, talking about the 2022 Electoral Law. Now, significantly looking at the numbers, at that point, that is before 2019, we're talking about 84 million registered voters.
That's right.
The coming of Professor Yakubu is targeting 100 million or 120 million Nigerians. So far, the Commission is gradually approaching 100 million from 84 million, added 10.2 million. Basically, we're talking about 90-something million registers. How are you looking at this unprecedented change in the electoral process?
Well, first of all, you have to look at the planning and then the execution of timing. Now, basically, we started during the Tahiru Mahmoud Jega's era. The timing for registration was very short and was done in a strict way that it has a kind of a time bound like 3 months and all. But here, what we have is a continuous voters registration process, which started something around early last year. And the continuous voter registration started really with Mahmoud Jega. And so Mahmoud Attairu Jega. Yeah, okay, right. Now it dovetailed into Mahmoud Yaqub. Okay, so, but executing it was through the Mahmoud Yaqub era, making it a continuous voter exercise. Normally, we usually wait to a period of election before we open the floodgate for registration. So by actualizing it, give room for registration. And here I must say, we give kudos to INEC through his continuous improvement. But unfortunately, people did not take advantage of that particular registration that was started early, because still people were still doubting the process. Yeah. But until when the result came out in Edo and Ondo, started giving hope to the Nigerian people who believe
subsequently that, Anambra and now
Ekiti. So they have seen that election and their vote can really count. And I must also say there's an upsurge of interest into some candidates, particularly, for example, Engineer Musa Kwankwaso and Comrade Peter Obi, who have resonated with the Nigerian youth. This is a fact. It's not as if we are creating...
Well, but even before their emergence, INEC has been going on with this continued voter registration. Mr. Kande, looking at, how all of this is changing the narratives in our electoral process and the confidence it is building among particularly the youths. Youths before now, though they've also been registering, but they haven't been actively participating in the election process. You find them, on the day of election in most cases, playing football, doing all sorts of things. If you ask them, they tell you that they don't care about election and what have you. For instance, in 2019, despite the fact that the youths, constitute 51% of the total registered voters in Nigeria, that is the 84 million we are talking about, only about a few percentage, I think some, I can't remember precisely the percentage now, but significantly it was very low, less than half of what was registered. That is to say, registering is one thing and then participating in election is another. But we're beginning to see a change in that direction. Youths are now coming up very strongly, wanting to take active part in this process. What would have been, the motivating factor?
Because the youths that registered in 2019 and probably 2015 are this time around coming into maturity. There's a difference between registering just for the sake of registration, and then there is the difference between now being politically conscious. Now, we've reached the era of political consciousness, and it's not a mistake. 2015, 2019, new parties, you understand, came on the landscape. Yes, there's still the dominant two political parties there, but there is what you call the emergence of a third force, a new force of people that are politically conscious, that see politics different from the way it was practiced in the past. And this happens in every generation. This is the generation that's going to take over from the so-called new breed that was built. In fact, the new breed that was built by President President Ibrahim Babangida in those years, in the 90s, are all fading out. And then there's a new breed that is taking over. And this is a new breed that has youths that many have not even seen military rule in their lives. Many were born after military rule. So yes, that is, you see an emerging consciousness. And you have to give kudos to the smaller political parties.
Is it about political consciousness? Because, the same youth we're talking about are lacking in confidence in the electoral process before now. Beyond just the consciousness, they never thought it's going to be this. They never take the the electoral management body serious when it talks about reforms until they begin to see, just like he said, the outcome now. Results are drastically changing. It wasn't the case of ballot stuffing, ballot snatching, and what have you. Isn't that?
Yes, the electoral system has improved, yes. But there is also, if the electoral system improved and there was no political consciousness, there is political consciousness now, but there is a lack of a political culture. That's where you are coming from. The political culture that sees people breeding political ethos and values that stand with them. You understand, that make them understand the political system, that make them understand political strategy and political communication. That culture is still not built. But there is a gradual build-up of political consciousness brought about by new, smaller independent parties that are giving the youths an alternative to the so-called old guard that they see are responsible for many of the wrongs that are going on in society.
Hello and thank you for joining us on Daily Politics. On Daily Politics, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. My name is Shafiu Suleiman. And today on the platform, we're looking at one very important issue, especially in our polity, that is voter inducement. We're looking at the enablers, the impact, and the way out. When you talk about voter inducement, it has so many acronyms, if you like, or so many names, to qualify it. Some call it stomach infrastructure. Others call it vote buying and selling because it is a two-way thing. And then basically it's about inducement, voter inducement in whatever sense. The idea perhaps is to get the voters to vote in a particular direction. And this issue has become germane in our polity today. It is defining and redefining our electoral process. From the recruitment exercise, perhaps at the first level, that is at the first layer, talking about getting the candidates to even emerge, a lot of monetization has taken place, and it's still taking place. We've been talking about the impact or the influence of delegates and what they're able to, make during the conventions of virtually all the political parties. And now, the voting population, the electorates themselves are the next target. Politicians across party lines, well, with some exception, and now looking at the electorates as the ultimate deciders, perhaps because the votes are likely going to count and they're beginning to count now. So all loopholes have been blocked, those enablers of rigging and what have you have been blocked by the reforms going on in the electoral process, especially engineered by INEC through the 2022 Electoral Act. This has become a very serious issue and a topical one in our daily discuss, especially political discuss. So this is what we're going to look at on Daily Politics tonight. And I have in the studio Ambassador Rufus Ayeniba, who is the National Publicity Secretary of the Social Democratic Party, the SDP. He's also the chairman of spokespersons for the Conference of Political Parties in Nigeria. Thank you for joining us.
With pleasure. Thank you.
We also have in the studio this evening, it's not a new face anyway, Comrade Salihu Mahmood is a political analyst and is also a former National Secretary, defunct Action Party of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, the pleasure is mine.
So before we commence the discussion proper, we'll take a break. Stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us. It's Daily Politics, and the conversation begins. Let me start with you, Mr. Rupos. You happen to be, one who is, if I say you, I mean your political party, the Social Democratic Party, SDP, has been raising concerns with regards to what they call the impact of this money politics, especially the voter inducement that we're talking about. In your own assessment, you said it has marred, or it has, impacted negatively on the Ekiti governorship election that was just concluded. Just give us your sense of, the magnitude of this challenge, especially as it happened in Ekiti. Some would say Ekiti is becoming a role model, or is becoming a case study when it comes to issue of voter inducement, in whatever sense. Let me hear your...
Yeah, thank you for having me. It calls for concern that we're in this situation as a people, as a nation. Our democracy, I find it difficult to agree with this term of saying our democracy is emerging, is evolving,
it's no longer nascent. It's no longer nascent. We're talking about more than 20 years.
Yes, any child of 18 has come of age, 21 specifically has come of age. So Nigeria, our democracy in this situation has come of age, and we expect certain standard of maturity as we go by. What we're witnessing now is a sad story for Nigeria. Sad in the sense that it doesn't look as if we want to move forward as a people. A situation where electoral corruption has been institutionalized and perfected in a manner, entrenched in our body politic in a manner that is difficult to even lay your hands on and say, oh, this is it. But these are staring us in the face.
Institutionalized.
Institutionalized.
Some will say, perhaps until recently, they will have a negligible, cases of.
It's not recent. If you're talking about a year ago, we also what happened in Osun in 2018, where we had just a small percentage of the electoral population that were needed to declare a governor. We saw how people were bought over with money by the two parties, and it became the highest bidder having the day. They needed, what was the number? I can't recall now, but it's there in the public domain. We saw 2018, that's 4 years ago. It's not today. And the same thing is cooking there. Okay, we just saw it.
Okay, but the proportion
in Ekiti.
Yeah, the magnitude is becoming alarming. When you find, sort of trading taking place at the polling units, the polling centers, even though some say it happened even before the election. Some people are going door to door, kind of trying to induce the voters and so on and so forth. But the level at which it is taking place now is so brazen that, it is no longer a secret that you find people brandishing, or showcasing monies they collected from politicians, to cast votes for them and what have you. The viral videos that went on, that were on social media after the Ekiti election, or during the Ekiti election, speaks volume to that. People are no longer ashamed of saying, yes, I have gotten so and so from this. People are also not ashamed of coming out to say, hey, who is buying and all of that. So it's becoming a norm. How are you looking at the trajectory?
Well, when you look at that, there are factors responsible for this. One, loss of confidence by the electorates in elected officials due to their past records of getting there and disconnecting with people and reality. Secondly, poverty.
then failure of the policing system. Even when we have two leading anti-graft agencies, the EFCC and the ICPC. In Ekiti elections, for instance, I saw on social media where there were detectives of EFCC even arresting people in their homes and host of other things. The moment elections are held and the ruling party that is at the center has the control of the police, security agencies, and all, and that this is what you get. Sometimes there are, with due respect, there are allegations of conspiracy and collaboration between some unscrupulous personnel and officers of the security agencies of both the police, civil defense, DSS, and others, where those you see that are being arrested or caught are the visible ones. The invisible ones are settled, and the settlement is made in Eden hotels, as we saw during the primaries of both the PDP, APC, and host of others, where when EFCC went to the National Stadium for the PDP wanting to arrest some people, the PDP, what have you, were smart enough to have shared their delegates' money in places that EFCC did not even get information on. So also that of the APC. So it is a kind of poverty that pushes the electorate to wanting to say, okay, let me collect what I will collect, because after all, for the 4 years, the governor will be there, or the State House of Assembly member, or House of Rep member, or senator, or even chairman of local government. I might not be able to have access to such elected leaders due to stiff protocol. And that is why in most cases, we say when we are practicing democracy that is in tandem with those of America and other first world countries, let our protocol systems be softened, because most of the times there are people...
Something to allow for voter inducement?
Well,
to institutionalize it or legalize it?
When you look at voter inducement, sometimes we as electorates also open the door for it, because for these politicians to know our weak points, there might be these practices. Don't forget, it didn't just originate from today. Second Republic, the MPN, UPN, MPP, and other parties, it was there. Then the short-lived SDP and NRC, what have you, of Babangida. There were allegations that most of the parties, the NRC and the SDP, that were the two, what have you, also did that. And from the advent of the stability of our democracy from 1999, we knew what happened in 2003 and what have you. Majorly, certain enlightenments are lacking, and poverty that I mentioned to you, as well as low enlightenment in the polity.
Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Shafiu Suleiman. All seems not to be well in the camp of the ruling All Progressives Congress APC, as it is about to lose about 22 of its lawmakers in the upper legislative chamber to the opposition PDP. In an earlier report, the Daily Trust said that 7 senators had defected to other parties, including Ibrahim Shekaro from Kano, Yahya Abdullahi from Kebbi, Adamu Aleru, also from Kebbi, Dauda Jika from Bauchi, Ahmad Babba Keita representing Katsina, Lawal Yahya Gumau from Bauchi, and Francis Alimikena from Edo. Chairman of the APC, Abdullahi Adam, was credited to have linked the mass defections from the party to the election season, when the country witnesses all manner of things. No other reasons for the defections have been given, as the defectors are yet to address the public. This is why on the program tonight, we will be looking at the potential wave of defections about to hit the ruling camp, and now it may affect their projections in 2023. I have hoping to have in the studio the national coordinator of the Muhammadu Buhari Osibanjo Dynamic Support Group, Honorable Usman Ibrahim. He will be joining us shortly on the platform. We also have former commissioner in Kebbi State talking about also a chairman of the Adamu Aleru APC faction in the state, Abdullahi Muhammad. He will join us via Skype to give us perspectives on this wave of defection, particularly as it regards Kebbi State. Let's now take a short break. When we return, we'll continue with the discussion. Stay tuned.
As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
Thank you very much for staying with us. It's still Daily Politics, and today we're looking at the web of defections that has been rocking, especially the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC. That's the last count. 7 senators were said to have, defected from the APC to other parties, the PDP and other opposition political parties, and about 20 or so are also about to leave. So joining us via Skype to discuss this issue is Adamu Abdullahi Muhammad, who is the chairman of the Adamu Aleru faction of the APC in Kebbi State. Abdullahi, if you're there, let's get to hear you from all the way from Benin Kebbi.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for joining us this evening. Let's get to hear your perspectives. Kebbi State is one of the states that has been badly hit, if I should put it, by this wave of defection, at a very high level, talking about the, the majority leader of the Senate, who has just defected to the PDP, and then another ranking senator, talking about Senator Adamu Aleru, has also defected to the PDP. So as it is now, 2 senators are already on the opposition flank. What could have been, the reason behind this decision by these ranking senators?
As a matter of fact, you have rightly made. Senator Mohammed Adamu Ali, in collaboration with distinguished senator and the majority leader, Dr. Yahya Abdullahi Malaman Kabi, these proving committed, dedicated, and pioneers leaders party of the APC. They remain focused, resolute, and committed to watching the improvement and landslide victory in the forthcoming election. It is a pity state is being led by people who are not honest and not committed, have no respect even to Mr. Muhammad Buhari, including our newly candidate, Dr. Ahmed.
Yeah.
So we did all we could to see that we bring ourselves together. Take what is happening in Zamfara, where all those who fall apart were able to come together, understand themselves, and get themselves amalgamated and move together toward the emancipation of the party. On the contrary, those people who made those in government what they are today are being cheated. Nobody led APC to progress in Kebbi State other than Senator Dr. Yahya Abdullahi Malaman Kabi, in collaboration with the former governor, who was a 8-year-long governor, was a minister, and also now a serving senator. Yet, the government of Kebbi State, with their own interest, tried to prostrate them, humiliate them, knock them, and put them aside with all their disciples. And we have been invited times without number for reconciliation. But the leadership of the government of Kebbi State is not sincere, is not honest. And unfortunately, when you look at this governor, you find that in every month where we have 30 and 29 days, as the case may be.
Mal Abdullahi, if you can hear me, Mal Abdullahi, you know, some would say defections of this nature are synonymous with political parties, especially you know, in the build-up to general elections and so on. It has happened, you know, before now. We've seen it was also, it is the same scenario that even brought about the APC. It was the disagreement or the disaffection among other political parties that led to factions who finally find their way into the merger in the APC that brought about this government. So defection of this nature is not new. But then what is of concern to many Nigerians is that why are politicians self-centered? Because some would say largely it's just about, you know, getting what they want. If it didn't go the way they want it, then they can leave the party at any point in time, because ideology is also lacking in political party affairs in Nigeria. Why this particular case? Was it about the people or just about their self-interest that has not been achieved in the APC?
As a matter of fact, the issue in Kebbi State is very clear and very unique. Those people we mentioned in question, Senator Muhammad Adamu Aliyu, the former governor, 8-year-long governor, who was a minister, FCT, and now is having senator, including a former permanent secretary, federal permanent secretary, Niger Delta Commission, and who is also a serving senator and now occupied the position of the leader of the party. These people are being frustrated, are being molested, are being neglected, marginalized, and even their disciples, the people who came along with them to make the party what it is, were all dropped for reasons best known to the governor and his fortunate few. I think the issue is this: there is no sincerity, there is no commitment. And even you look at Kebbi as a whole, you find during the past 7 years, and we are now approaching the 8 years, what have we got on the ground, which the existing government has really put on place to make APC a success during the forthcoming election come 2023?
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. Now let's get into the discussion proper. So, Mr. Emmanuel, the placeholders, I mean, like, what is the idea? Well, we know the general idea behind it, but what actually is the idea of having a placeholder? What does it entail?
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. I think basically, you know, we're very good at copying a whole lot of stuff from America and all that. But we're not pretty much good at executing what we copy. I think that word placeholder, you know, emanated from the U.S. system, where, you know, because basically the word placeholder is a position that is held by someone in government.
Okay.
You know, sort of a reward system that the U.S. Normally uses. But I know that within the context of Nigeria, we don't have it anywhere in our constitution. We don't have it anywhere in our electoral jurisprudence. However, most likely it came into the lexicon, you know, from one of the supposed placeholder when he says, "I'm just here as a stopgap."
Okay.
You realize critically that the 2023 general elections, especially the presidential election, it's quite dynamic and completely different from what we used to have. So this is like a cat and mouse game, like a chess game between the ruling All Progressive Congress and, of course, the other opposition parties who are critically taking a cursory look at what and who the candidate of APC will choose. That will determine, will determine if who and where they would go to. So we are looking at the issue of Northwest or Northeast, given that the People's Democratic Party candidate is from the Northeast, and I mean, he's a political gladiator, and he has also chosen somebody from the South. And now you have a presidential candidate of one of the major opposition candidate party from the Southeast. You have another one from the Northwest. Then you have the ruling party from the Southwest. So it's a mixed bag. The politicians are very good at chess games. So for me, I think it's clearly a chess game.
Okay.
They're just taking their time, given that also that there's a window for replacement. So they're just playing a game, given that they have that window. Other than that, I mean.
All right, Mr. Ose, let me come to you. It seems like every election cycle we have new vocabulary coming into Nigerian politics. I mean, like this is still on this issue of a placeholder. One of, let's say, the major opposition party, that's the PDP, have named a substantive running mate. The ruling party named a placeholder, another opposition party named another placeholder. So is it only the PDP that's got its house in order, or?
An interesting question, Ibrahim. I want to reject what you just said about the PDP having a substantive candidate. We have a candidate.
Okay.
We don't have a fixed, permanent, temporary. We have a candidate.
I see.
That's what the law says.
Okay.
And then when you hear about the placeholders, it's interesting because one of the things the new Electoral Amendment Act sought to do was to cure this reckless substitution that political parties used to do. So they put in a clause that, you know, unless you die or unless the candidate himself withdraws and submits a letter to the party and to INEC, you cannot change them. And what you see political parties doing is an abuse of the law. You know, let's not, you know, call it anything else. It's not chess games, it's not politicking.
Okay.
It's exploiting loopholes within the law in a cynical manner that, you know...
Which I don't think is illegal, is it?
It's cynical.
Okay.
Which defeats the purpose of the law. And I don't want us to sit and, you know, applaud it. It's not brinksmanship. It's not smartness. It's an abuse of the spirit of the law, and it should be condemned. You know, so that is my position about it. You know, we've had a lot of time. We had time between the selection of candidates in primaries and the submission of the names to INEC. So there was more than enough time to go around the country to consult with stakeholders. But what politicians in some of these parties, I don't want to mention names, I will, the APC and Labour, have done is fall foul of that provision. And instead of being penalized, which I think they should be, they've put in placeholders. Now, the danger of this, remember I said the candidate, the placeholder candidate, has to write that he's withdrawing.
Yes.
I don't know if you've been following the issue with the Senate president and his placeholder, who has refused to withdraw. And legally, in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of INEC, he is the candidate because he took part in the primaries and he was validly elected and he won. And he cannot be compelled to withdraw. So you see the danger of this thing. When you abuse processes, sometimes it comes back to bite you immediately. But I think even more insidiously, it's that it doesn't come back to bite you. There are no penalties, and then it now becomes tradition and precedent set. And I want us to reject it and push against it and condemn those who have done it so that our electoral system is the better for it.
All right. Well, I can see Brother shaking his head to that. But let's go down to the legality of the matter.
Absolutely.
INEC says they do not recognize placeholders. That it has no place in our constitution. It has no place in the commission's guidelines or rules. So what does that mean for the parties that actually have these placeholders?
I think we're all crying more than the bereaved in this whole scenario.
Okay.
In the first instance, I want to fault my brother, Ose.
I see.
The issue of the Senate President, senatorial tickets, and of course the gentleman whom they are, have this higi-haga concerning who is and who is not. It's completely different from the issue of choosing a vice presidential running mate.
Okay.
Because the vice presidential running mate does not go through any electioneering process. It's by appointment by the candidate, haven't gone through all kinds of consultation within his political party and wherever he feels or deems necessary. And you must also understand and appreciate the fact that Nigeria is a plural society. And in the bid to balance and to also ensure that you have your best foot forward within the ticket. So I want to give it to the candidate and of course possibly the political parties. Probably they didn't have enough time to exhaust for consultation, given that a lot of their elections happened. Of course, the PDP primaries took place way ahead of the APC, the Labour Party, the NNPP, and of course the rest of them. That doesn't also mean that PDP has got its house completely in order.
Okay.
It just means that the other parties probably have more consultation to do.
Well, but we have some candidates who have been shouting the mantra from the hills that I have been wanting to do this all my life.
Yes.
And when it comes to the business end of it,
yes,
it doesn't seem to have applied. Didn't they see that far ahead?
It depends on how you look at it, because the word placeholder, there's no form within the INEC or within the electoral law that is called placeholder. I think we are the ones who are giving the name placeholder because of the explanations that have, that emanated from the choice of the persons that were put forward to meet a particular deadline. And like you clearly mentioned, no law has been broken here. And there's no form called placeholder. INEC has come out to clearly explain that. It is in our analysis that we've used the word placeholder.
We need a name for them. We had to give them a name.
Notwithstanding, because tomorrow, the APC can come out tomorrow and say that they're not changing anybody and they're going to run with who they have. That is their business. So if it works for them, fantastic. It doesn't work for them, that's their business. But for sure, the Labour Party will substitute the person they have there today.
Okay.
They will definitely substitute.
Why?
Because there's been talks between Labour Party, NNPP, PRP, and quite a number of other political parties.
Talks can break down.
That is the reason why you need time to be able to make the best of decisions while this talks is going on.
All right, so the Labour Party seems to have had an excuse for this since they are consulting.
You can call it an excuse, Brian, but the reality is that when you're going to dislodge a giant, you need to be prayerful, you need to pray very well, you need to look at the house properly to know the weaknesses of the house and know where to enter from. You need to know, how many men do you need to go into the house so that when you get into the house of the strong man, you dislodge him from the house. It's not easy to dislodge a ruling political party. For such a party like APC with 22 governors and, as at last week, 52 senators or thereabout. So you need a whole lot to do that, and that is one of the reasons why the alliance is going